What's up? Good morning. Welcome to Trading Live with Bubba for Tuesday, July the 15th. And, there's not a lot going on, which is the story, the recent story. We had CPI this morning, which was as expected. The markets made a little bit of a jump, and now they're starting to see a little bit of pressure. But one of the things you always want to remember is that dull markets tend to drift higher, and you can't get much duller than this. It would not surprise me if we had a turnaround Tuesday and we ended up closing lower, but markets are pretty much overbought. From a trading standpoint, we don't have much yet here. It's been pretty much of a challenge to find those opportunities, but that is consistent with light volume and what's going on. You do have a lot more news this week, so I would urge you and recommend you to be a little bit more careful with your short-term trading because you can get, you've got PPI tomorrow, retail sales and housing information on Thursday. So, sometimes when you're in a market like this, you want to stay kind of out or very nimble. Have on very safe types of positions, which would be, selling credit or whatever. But overall, we see a relatively slow market. So we're not getting those blow-off type trades that we're looking for as often as we would like to. And this has been the case for a while. Gold is kind of churning in the middle of nowhere. Bonds and notes are lower, indicating interest rates are going higher. And they are not going to cut rates anytime soon. The battle between Powell and Trump is one of it. But the real fact is that if you cut rates, you're going to spike inflation. And inflation is still too high anyways. So we'll sit here and look and see if we can find some opportunities. Maybe there'll be something coming as a sell in the NASDAQ potentially. Again, it's really slow. So it's not like we're overly excited to find something to do here. Again, we obviously would like to trade. We'd like to make some money, but we're not going to force action to get to that point. We've had a fairly significant sell-off from the highs, but you did have a big rally. You had Sunday night into Monday. Markets were way lower and ended up closing higher. Last night, the markets were lower, and then there was an announcement from NVIDIA that charged the markets higher. And now we got the Dow down about 300, the Russell down about 200, the S&P down about 7, but the NASDAQ is still, charging higher. But again, there's really no oomph or action or speed to this market, which makes it more of a challenge. If we can get a little bit of a spike in volume here, we might look at the NASDAQ here, maybe the S&P. But again, I'm not going to be aggressively looking for anything because I can see the lack of overall activity in the market anyway. So one of the things you learn from trading long enough is you learn that sometimes it's better to observe than be overly active. And it does not appear like we'll see a trade coming. So let's take a look at some of the other stuff that we do and see if we can find some stuff. Apple is in the middle of nowhere. So what am I going to do? Okay. And you did have also JP Morgan's earnings today, which, it depends how you want to look at them, but there's not much action. That's the key. So earnings season kicked off this morning. But as we look at Amazon, getting close to a potential sell, but you're in a pretty bullish pattern. Again, you're not quite as overbought as I'd like to be. One of the things we're lacking here is volume and activity. That makes it harder. Coin, Charlie Oscar India November, really only up against the 400, but really not true resistance there yet. It was just a mark of a whole number that you might expect some selling. You would just want to be very careful. Notice crowd. Now, crowd could be a buy here if you want it. Again, I am not going to buy it. I always will tell you exactly what I'm going to do. But you could sell some put spreads here, but I have no interest. But it's defined its levels. We were looking just for over that 520 level or so. 500 to 520, and we got it, but we didn't do anything with it. Meta, right in the middle of nowhere. So again, what am I gonna do here? I'm gonna do nothing because I'm gonna do. Google's interesting. It is breaking out, okay, and has broke out of consolidation. It is a little bit overbought, and certainly I could see a potential for Google here to sell. Let's take a look at what it looks like. Now, again, you have to be careful this week because there is a lot of news. And again, it's normally, I wouldn't be as concerned, but you have a lot of news in 3 days. And, you know, again, so I'm a little bit more concerned about the trade. I'm not really interested in selling, let's see, the 185, 187.50. It's a little volume. The premium's a little skinny. Okay. Certainly, if you wanted to sell it at 65 cents, you could. I'm gonna stand on the sidelines with this. IWM, again, really in nowhere's land. So again, there's just other things you watch. Here's one we watch. Look at this one. This would be one that you might look at selling, but again, it's not truly a blow off yet. I'd wait for a daily and to see. But if this continues to go up, I would look to sell some call spreads here. Microsoft, again, you've got nothing really standing out that says, hey, I got to get in here. Let's just see if we've got anything going in here for a potential trade. And really, no. Let's go back and finish off our list anyways. MSTR, this would be one to look at. MSTR, Michael Sierra Tango Romeo. All right. Let's see here. 447.50. Now, this is not a bad sale. I kind of like this. 447.50, 450 for $1.10, $1.05. I can live with that. I'm going to go ahead and put that trade on. Okay. Yeah, obviously this ties to Bitcoin as well. You know, again, I'm not a bear against Bitcoin. I just think you'll probably see a little bit of a pullback. If you look at Bitcoin itself, obviously overbought, exploded higher, nicely done, but it should either come back down to 110,000 or it should at least consolidate, which is either case works for us. And I did get filled on MSTR. NNE, which is a new one I'm watching, in consolidation. I bought this the other day at about 34 and change, but there's really nothing to do right in here. Nugget, kind of in the middle of nowhere, not really much to do. NVIDIA is probably one to look at, exploding higher. You're all the way up in here. Let's see what NVIDIA looks like. VDA. November Victor Delta Alpha. The premium's a little skinny. You want to sell the 172.50, 175 for 85 cents. This is normally a little bit less than I'd like to get, but again, based on the big pop, I would be willing to sell it, especially considering that it's gone basically straight up since 145. Again, I'm not bearish the stock. I just expect a little bit of a pullback or a little bit of sideways trade. The Qs, nothing really, right up against a little bit of resistance, but not quite as overbought as I'd like it. SMCI breaking out. I'd like to watch this a little bit today and see what it looks like. Again, I'm not overly excited, as you can tell, to get into much of anything right now. The SPY, I need a little bit more of a rally. Tesla, just kind of mid-range. So as you can see, there isn't a ton to do right in here. Let's just see if there's anything coming in here. And again, you can see the volume is drying up as we get a little bit of a rally. One of the things we need is a little bit more what we call two-way trade, buyers and sellers. Okay. And, you know, that's one of the issues that we are dealing with. this is really what we would call a retail rally. This is the natural dull market where every day money flows in on the buy side, and with the lack of commercial participants, there's really no sellers here. So you continue to see markets push. We're not getting that two-way action that we'd like to see. And what's the VIX doing? VIX is just down a little bit. So again, you're in that phase. But we did do a trade in NVIDIA and an MSTR if you did. And if you didn't, it's no big deal. Okay. Again, I don't have a problem if you sit on the sidelines. That's what I'll be doing after this call. Okay. I don't mind putting on a couple of trades, but I'm not overly excited trying to load up the boat into a ton of news, and B, the lack of overall opportunity in the market. This is one of the things you got to remember. You can see by the tape, you can see by the chart, there is not a dramatic amount of opportunity here. Okay. And I think you just have to, weigh what's going on and see. But again, if you take a look at some of the, other spaces, if you look at some of the commodities, corn's getting a little bit of a pop, which you would have expected. Cattle continues to push up at these all-time highs, which is a joke. But it is what it is. Remember, you can't fight the overall tape. I think crude oil is a sale at about 70 if it pops back up there. But overall, again, it's a very challenging market to deal with right now. Palantir, again, you could certainly sell some call spreads here if you felt, but again, pretty bullish pattern. So what you're basing it on is that it's overbought, and that there should be at least some sideways action, if nothing else. Okay, and that's really kind of what you're basing it on. Okay, is that you expect the markets to go into some sort of consolidation pattern. Okay, and Planeteer certainly is one you could look at as well. Again, all you're doing is looking for basically a mathematical edge, okay? Without getting yourself too deeply involved, and without exposing yourself to a ton of risk, because you can see the lack of volume in this market is really just churning. Certainly, if you have any questions, feel free to fire them in. But again, for my money, there doesn't seem like a ton of activity here that says that I want to really take risk or expose myself. But we'll watch these and see if we can get anything on a day trading basis. It doesn't appear to be the case. But again, markets don't announce themselves. We don't know if it will not give us an opportunity. Certainly, if you're looking at the euro currency, maybe a potential bottoming pattern. But again, those are different than the day trading patterns. Okay, the day trading patterns that we use are very exact as to volume and price. And if those events don't occur together, then we typically don't get too involved. Okay, and that's obvious. You can see that we're not very much involved. We have done a couple of spreads today, but other than that, I don't see a ton to get involved in. I think it's just, again, you have to have the patience and the will to sit and wait. And right now, there's just, again, it's a pretty ugly picture from a trading standpoint. Which way the market goes, we could care less. Okay. One of the things you have to remember is we could care less which way the markets go. We just want enough action in either direction to be able to take advantage of other traders and their emotions when they get a little wacko. Okay, that's what our business is to take advantage of the emotion. It used to be on the floor. They used to talk about. We used to talk about when you can see their tonsils, give them whatever they want because they're wrong. This is the same thing. Okay, if you can't see, you're not seeing enough volume, which means there's no panic, which means there's not much of an opportunity. And, panic comes to either side, FOMO on the upside, fear on the downside. Okay. So once again, you could have made a play on the NASDAQ. I wouldn't have, and I didn't, or I would have called it. But again, it is doing what we might have thought. But again, there's not enough action here for me to want to get overly involved. There is really not enough action anywhere to get overly involved. And I think that's important for you. Again, these are all for you to understand, because this little blow-off trade is a great method for you, because you don't have to sit there and stare at the machine. You got a spare hour, you want to look, hey, check it out. Because it has nothing to do with what's happened an hour ago. All that you care about is that the pattern you're looking for appears not. And for those who've been coming the most, you know that we've made money on almost every trade we've made. We haven't had a lot. So that's, again, a problem. But the point is that you could walk in at any time and you can see, and if nothing happens in 20, 30 minutes, you walk away, come back again later. That's one of the things you have to remember. This method has nothing to do with anything going on in the market. It's purely based on, is there a spike, okay, in either direction? I mean, this would have been a potential right here. Again, I didn't make this trade, so again, I don't like to talk about them, but this would have been a potential in the dot, okay? Right there would have been a potential sell, and you can see it came right down. Again, here's a buy in crude oil, okay, which I did make. Okay. So again, you're only looking for, it doesn't matter. I don't care what happened previously. All I care about is, am I getting a volume spike and a price spike in either direction? Okay. That will end. Okay. When we start getting 2 and 3 standard deviations away from the mean, you're going to get some retracement. Okay. And it works at a very high probability. And it's something that you have to be willing to be patient enough to wait for. Okay. And again, if you're not, then it's not going to work out for you. Okay. This is a game of patience. It's a game of being in the right positions based on the math of the market. Okay. That's what we're looking at, the math that's included in it. So if you get a parabolic move up or down with parabolic volume, then you're going to be willing to go ahead and step in and make that trade. Okay. And obviously you can see we're not seeing any. Now there's a potential coming in crude here, but it's really thin. Okay. I mean, crude, technically, from a trading standpoint, if it goes through that line on volume, okay, it's going to be a buy. Okay. But again, you then have to weigh the overall volume and look how thin it is and make your decision if you want to partake. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with it. Okay. We do know what our risk is going to be, so we can set the stop. We know what we're going to focus on, and maybe we'll get a trade. Now, of course, obviously, if this trade comes, it's going to come right as we're saying goodbye. And if you are afraid or don't know how to manage a trade, then it's probably not a good trade for you to take. Okay, but there you go. This is going to, most likely qualify. Okay, now again, the volume is kind of skanky. Okay, I'm not overly enthused by the volume. This is not like a true panic. You would see a bar more like this. Okay, something that really stands out. But again, from a pure trading standpoint, that would be something to look at. So again, I don't know if you want to get involved in it or not. Okay, but certainly as we look, okay. So we'd be looking here now for a green bar now. And we don't have it yet. And I'm going to suggest that we just pass again, because I want to be able to help you manage it. But there is a potential trade. Let's see if it triggers before we go. Again, I'm not going to take it myself, so I don't expect you to take it, but I think it's good to learn and start to watch these patterns so that you can put yourself in the best position. It does not look like it's going to qualify before we say goodbye. So we'll see you back here on Thursday. Thanks, everybody. Sorry we couldn't get any trades, but we did put on a couple of spreads, and I'll see you back here Thursday. Have a great day, everybody.
You know how the financial world goes. Here comes the buzzkill. Please make sure to take some time to read this boring disclaimer. We will owe you one.